Today we're going to talk about a few movies. We're going to talk about Joker. We're going to talk about the new Charlie's Angels film, which predictably was dead on arrival. And we're going to talk about what's perhaps one of the most surprising and best movies I've seen in a long time. But first, this isn't a channel where we just talk about movies and fun stuff. This channel is actually about you and giving you pieces of information that you may not be aware of, or you're aware of but you kind of forgot about them and you're not really implementing them into your life. So this channel is about you and giving you information to help you out in life. And now this is going to be a video where I can see some people are going to be offended by some of the things that I say, but I'm not asking you to believe exactly what I believe or hold the same values that I hold or have the same rules for your life that I have for my life. I'm just presenting some things for your consideration and things that maybe if you think about them, maybe they help you out in some way. So keep that in mind. Ultimately, whatever I'm going to say, it's about you and for your consideration of things that could benefit you. And certainly, you don't have to hold the same values that I hold for myself. We all have different things in life that we value, and that's okay. That's part of what makes the world go around. We're not all exactly the same. Now, first, let's talk about the new Charlie's Angels film, which I did not see, and reading about what's after the weekend box office, apparently not many people have seen this movie, which was very predictable. And I'd like to share with you some things that my wife had to say. My wife, she went out when the first Charlie's Angels movie was out. She went with a couple girlfriends, and they really enjoyed it, apparently. This is before I knew her, so I'm trying to retell her story. But they had three girls, and she went with three girls starring in the movie: Drew Barrymore, Cameron Diaz, and Lucy Liu. And they were all very distinct. They all had their distinct personality and traits. And it was very interesting because they want girls to identify, but there was three different types. And so depending on whatever your taste is, whether you're a guy or a girl, I know for me, my favorite was Lucy Liu. I don't think anyone's favorite was Drew Barrymore, but it's like, are you more into Cameron Diaz or Lucy Liu? If you're a guy, I preferred Lucy Liu. But even the girls, like, who do they identify with? And my wife, she saw the original with a couple friends, and they would be like, my wife is like, okay, I'll be like the Lucy Liu of the group, and the other one's going to be the Cameron Diaz, the other one's going to be the Drew Barrymore. So they all were very distinct. And then walking by the theater in the mall with my wife, seeing the poster, and I said, hey, look, there's the new Charlie's Angels movie. And she's like, what? What is that? And then lately they've been showing the trailer on this one channel that we watch because they're sponsoring this channel, so they show the trailer in full. And my wife had some very interesting observations about it. One of the things she said was, seeing these girls in the movie, they all seem very generic. A better way to go about it, they should do a trailer where they show you each one and what their characteristics are, because watching the trailer, it's all very forgettable. All you see is you see a lesbian-looking girl that's the star and another blonde woman. Well, there's two other girls. There's a black woman and another one. Very forgettable. They hardly show you anything. The one woman, the older blonde lady, she's actually the writer and director of the movie, but the trailer seems to feature her more than the three actual Charlie's Angels. So it comes off very, very generic. They don't really show you anything about these girls other than they have one that looks like a lesbian, and they have an older one that seems to be teaching these younger girls the way. And one thing that you'll notice if you talk to girls, like talking to my wife, even girls, when they see a movie like this that's supposed to be for other women, they don't want to see lesbian-looking chicks. They want to see cute girls themselves. It was also kind of funny because when we first walked through the theater and saw the poster, my wife said, but where's the Lucy Liu one? Like, isn't there supposed to be an Asian one? And then I kind of had to explain to her, well, it's actually based off a TV show from the 70s, and there was no Asian ones. That's just in the remake movie. So what we have now, coming out this weekend, is a remake of a remake, basically. But the director's gone on to say that she blames men for it being a big failure because men don't want to see women in action movies. Well, yeah, that's true, but what the heck is wrong with that? Do you have to tell us what we have to like? Your agenda-driven movie, we're supposed to like it. Otherwise, we're somewhat bad people. But even if men didn't weren't interested in the movie, but women still really wanted to see this movie, they would probably be taking their boyfriends or husbands or other girls. And it's kind of funny. Recently, we watched the first two movies, the ones with Drew Barrymore and Cameron Diaz and Lucy Liu. They've been showing those on TV, and we watched them. The first one, I didn't like it when it came out, but the first one, it's actually kind of a fun movie that you can turn your brain off, and you have the girls, they're trying to use sex appeal and be cute. I can see how that would be a very politically incorrect movie in today's climate, because back in the early 2000s when this was released, it was probably seen as very much a pro-feminist movie, but now I can see how the feminists would hate it because they very much use sex appeal. The first one, I mean, it's a good movie if you can turn your brain off and buy into some of the ridiculousness, and then by the sequel is actually more the same, but it's just too much by that point. One thing I don't like about any of these movies or about a lot of modern movies today is anytime they show a scene of a girl punching out a man, I think that that's really bad because you're teaching girls something very bad. You're teaching girls that they can actually fist fight with men, but that's just something that's going to get them hurt in real life because people, they learn through example. Monkey see, monkey do, and they just keep putting this out in the consciousness of the public that women can fight with guys and that's okay and that's acceptable, but try that in real life, you're just going to get these girls hurt very badly. So very predictably, the new Charlie's Angels movie was a disaster, which I could have predicted. Taking one look at, even within a few seconds of seeing the trailer, just seeing the poster, I can tell, I know a lot about women, and even just from talking to but before I talk to my wife, just knowing what I know about women, I can tell women are not going to want to see a movie like this, pushing something like this on us. But moving on to Joker, I did see that this weekend. Now, I want to say something that I should have said at the beginning of the video. I haven't been to the movie theater in many years, and I made a decision years ago that I probably don't need to pay to go to the movie theater anymore because these days there's such a high turnaround that even if I want to see a movie, it's going to come to video pretty quick. Within a month or two, it's probably already going to come on video. And there's so many people that go and spend money at the movies, especially if you're in the United States where movies are very expensive. Where I live, a movie, I haven't been in probably 3-4 years to a movie, but I think it's around $4 to $5 to go see a movie here. If you go to IMAX, and we have an IMAX theater like right behind our building basically, that I think is about $10 to $12 to see an IMAX movie. Quite a bit more expensive, but I think that's probably what it costs on average to buy a movie ticket in the United States. So they're not that cheap, and they come to video so quickly that you can see these movies. If you just have a little bit of willpower and a little bit of impulse control, you can just wait to see it either at a reduced cost or even see it for free if you're just willing to wait a month or two. And so I came to this rule, and this is not a hard and fast rule. I would allow myself to break it, and I've thought about breaking it lately. But basically I decided I'm not going to pay to see a Hollywood movie. There's no need to. And if you enjoy going to the movies once in a while, so be it. I'm just giving you my perspective that maybe you want to implement it in your life, maybe you don't, but it also doesn't have to be a hard and fast rule of I'm never going to see another movie in the theater again. There may be exceptions to the rule, and if there is, allow yourself to enjoy it. For example, I considered going and seeing the new Rambo in the theater. I considered going and seeing Joker in the theater. I considered it, but they weren't really options. So I quickly got out of my mind. And the reason they're not options is I have a baby, and where I live for an R-rated movie, they don't allow anyone under the age of 16 to go in. Doesn't matter if they're with an adult, and it doesn't matter if it's even a baby like mine where they won't understand it. And my baby, he would mostly be under a nursing cover the whole time, eating, and wouldn't even be seeing the movie. But they won't allow it because if someone comes in from the government and sees that, well, the theater can be fined. So they just won't allow it. So they will allow men in the women's bathroom because that would be because they could get in trouble these days. So they have an official policy now where men are allowed to go into women's bathrooms at these places, but baby can't go see an R-rated action movie. But so that's one rule I have, and the other rule is generally, and this started about 5 years ago, I mostly quit watching R-rated movies and unwholesome movies. Now, I make exceptions to the rules. Like I said, these aren't hard and fast rules, but the reason I did that was I just started to notice as I got older that watching some of these things, even if they're very well done, like some of these HBO TV shows, they're very well done, but it leaves you with a bad feeling afterwards. So anyways, I had the opportunity to see Joker this weekend, and I watched it with my wife. And I'm not going to break down the whole movie. I just saw an interesting breakdown of it on the Black Pilled YouTube channel, and I highly recommend that, not just for his breakdown of the Joker video that's interesting, and you may or may not agree with his takes on movies. He just released a new one on the film Idiocracy. But he has some very interesting things to say about movies and things that you might want to consider for your own benefit, whether you want to keep handing your money over to these people, whether that's in your best interests. But go watch his video later for his breakdown. It's highly interesting. I won't get into exactly what the film contains, but me and my wife, we didn't care for it, and this is for a few different reasons. One is, watching the movie, I felt like I'd already seen every scene, because I think I've seen at least an image from every scene with the trailer and all the various memes online of it. I think I've seen every shot in that movie before even seeing it, and there's really no surprises in the movie. Pretty much exactly what you think is going to happen. Even me, I tried to mostly avoid hearing about it because I didn't want spoilers, but it's very predictable what happens. There's no surprises. Like I said, every time a scene comes on, it's like, okay, I've already seen this image because I've at least seen a still shot from it in a meme or something like that. And also, it's so similar to so many other movies, especially Robert De Niro movies. It's kind of like a cross between the movie Taxi Driver and King of Comedy, and elements from some other movies, but it's... And I know a lot of millennials and Zoomers, they haven't seen a lot of those movies. Maybe I've seen a lot of older movies. I mean, the movie Taxi Driver, that came out before I was even born. And some of these other movies, maybe I wasn't born or I was just a baby when they were out. But growing up, watching a lot of movies on VHS, I'd seen a wide range of films that a lot of my contemporaries have not seen. So I understand a lot of people, they're not familiar with many of these other films. So the whole thing was just very familiar, but ultimately we didn't like it because the movie's not a feel-good movie. It's a movie that lowers your vibration, so to speak. And what I mean by that is it doesn't... You leave not feeling so good about the world, not feeling so good about yourself. And I think the goal for all of us should really be to feel good, and to feel good now. And essentially what that means is just to feel a little bit better than whatever you're feeling. And it's to do it now. Because, especially with my other channel, my main channel, so many people, they'd write me and they'd say, well, I'll be happy when I can travel, or I'll be happy when I can move abroad, or I'll be happy when I can retire and do what I really want. And I was thinking, man, that's totally the wrong attitude. You have to find a way to be happy now somehow. And it'll make everything else come a lot easier if you can do that. So it was very perplexing to me that so many people, they rant and rave about the Joker, how great it is. And it was a well-made movie. But it's really not that better made than most big-budget Hollywood movies. They're all pretty well-made when you get to that level, at least most of them. But it shocks me that so many people in this movie, it's made over $1 billion now. I think it's the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time. And I know a lot of that's because hype. Even me, I probably would have seen this in the theater if I didn't have a baby that isn't allowed to go to it. But there's so much hype online, and one of the things that's very much surprised me is how much some of these far right-wing guys praise the movie. And the movie is essentially about a total loser and not a good, not an admirable character, and guys talking about how based this movie is. And well, this movie, it's made by a Jewish director, two Jewish writers. It stars a Jewish vegan, and they're trying to tell me that they're trying to reveal truth or something based to me. And this is what they want to go out and support with their money. Instead of independent artists, independent creators, they would rather go support these establishment guys. And I'm not trying to chastise anyone that's did this, that anyone that's went and seen the movie, and anyone that's enjoyed the movie, but these are things to think about. These are things that really surprised me. Why so many young, far right-wing or conservative guys, they'll tell you how great this movie is and how we should all identify with it. And I remember when I was a little kid, when the movie Batman from 1989 came out, with the one with Jack Nicholson. And this movie came out, it was such a huge phenomenon, and I don't think I've seen another movie come out in my lifetime. A lot of superhero movies come out these days, and a lot of them are popular, like Aquaman or whatever, but they're not cultural phenomenons. The Joker's maybe the closest thing to that in many ways, especially because now we have meme culture. But if you were alive, and I was a very young kid when that movie came out, but I begged my Dad, this movie, you gotta take me to this movie, I've gotta see it. So my dad, we didn't go to a lot of movies growing up, we mostly rented them on VHS, but my dad took the family to the movie, and I absolutely loved it. It was such a great movie. It's kind of funny because at the time everyone would talk about what a dark movie that was, but you watch it by today's standards, the movie seems kind of silly, kind of campy in a lot of ways. It wouldn't pass as a dark film by any means by today's standards. So it's kind of a joke that people actually thought of that as a dark film for that time period. And I forced my dad, by the way, to take me to a lot of movies as a little kid, mostly terrible movies. I forced him to take me to the movie Big Top Pee-wee. I forced him to take me to a movie called Hot to Trot. You probably don't know what that is, and for good reason, because it's an absolutely terrible movie that definitely wouldn't stand the test of time. So we watched Joker, we didn't like it, and it amazes me that people, they enjoy handing their money over to people that probably don't, I'm sure obviously not only don't have the same values as them, but people that would be actively working against their interests. And it's not because, mentioning that they're Jewish people, it's not that I hate Jewish people or hate anyone that's different than me, but these guys seem to have very different values than the people that are actually behind this movie. And the ultimate thing is, I don't get why people would want to spend money and focus on something that doesn't make them feel good. Especially some of these groups of people, like I mentioned, that are very into this and think it's the best movie ever. But then after that, we watched a movie called Glass. And now, I'm not going to give away this movie, but it has a lot of similarities to The Joker, actually. And this is a movie that I thought was very surprising, because I was very surprised by how good a modern movie is. And it has a lot of the same elements as Joker, and especially if you watch them back to back, you can kind of get that. There's a lot of similarities. Now, this is also a very dark, very thrilling movie. But at the end, ultimately, it leaves you with a very good message. And I don't want to talk about it too much because I don't want to give away the ending. Also, this movie, too, I had the luxury of not seeing any trailers. I'd barely heard of it before seeing it. I just knew that there was a sequel to the movie Unbreakable, which is like 20 years old already, which is a decent little movie with Bruce Willis. And the theme of that movie, Unbreakable, if you watch, and they just showed that on TV recently, is getting you to believe in yourself. And now the movie Glass, it's actually a sequel to two movies, Unbreakable and another movie called Split, which I haven't seen, but I'm going to have to see now. But the movie Unbreakable, whereas that one's about getting you to believe in yourself, the movie Glass is actually about getting you to doubt yourself. And that self-doubt that creeps in and holds you back. But I can't get into too much about the movie. It's kind of funny, I was watching this video from Robert Kiyosaki yesterday, the Rich Dad Poor Guy, and I'm not too familiar with him, but it kind of reminded me of some of the things he said in the video about how schools are not designed really to help you succeed. The school system, it's designed to keep you at a certain level. That's how the school system is. They don't want you to know certain things, and certainly the teachers can't teach it because they don't know those things themselves. But a lot of that, without giving away the movie, it kind of fits into that. Or Kevin Trudeau, he talks about how sometimes how there's secret societies, whether it's the Bilderberg Group or any of these other secret societies, Skull and Bones you have, but how they essentially they want the elites of society and these secret society, the elites of society that are part of these secret societies, they don't want people to the average person to know certain things. They want to have their elite class and then they want to have the worker class. So they want to keep you down. They want to keep you so you don't know about everything that you can do. So I highly recommend that movie Glass. It's a much better alternative to the Joker. It's very interesting too because it's a modern movie, but it's actually a pretty wholesome movie. And this is a movie that's a very dark thriller. They didn't need to resort to a lot of F-bombs or anything like that. But like I said, these, like especially when I gave you my philosophies, if I don't go to movie theaters anymore, and that, like I said, it's not a hard and fast rule. Maybe sometime in the future I'll see something that I think is worth going and supporting. Maybe you want to implement that into your life, or just consider cutting back. It's kind of like if someone drinks alcohol every night and you say to them, hey, that's not good for you, and you're spending a lot of money doing it, but maybe instead of doing that every night, maybe you just do it on the weekends. Maybe you don't quit cold turkey, but you can at least cut back significantly. And the other thing I find is, and this is something I still do, but I cut back probably by 80-90%. Trying to, if I'm going to watch entertainment, watching something that's a little bit more feel-good, a little bit more wholesome. And me growing up, I grew up such a big film buff, and I actually have a film degree. That's what my degree is in from university. But what I loved about movies growing up was they were such a big source of inspiration. You think about how many people that have watched a Rocky movie, then they go and join a gym right afterwards, or they go for a run afterwards. They're so inspired. Or if you, before having a wrestling tournament, you watch a movie like Bloodsport, and it gets you fired up and it really inspires you. I don't find modern movies very inspiring. They just don't inspire you to go and do stuff like those older stuff from the 80s and from previous decades. So that's something I want to give you I want to give you a few things to consider. But go ahead and leave a comment with your thoughts. Maybe you disagree with me. If you do, that's fine, but say why. So go ahead and check out our other videos, and be sure to go out into the real world and interact with people, not just online. That's one of the most important things. And go out with a good attitude.